Welcome back, and hey, guess who's number 32 this week? Bam, it's the Jets. They lost 20-3 this week, and while we can debate about games that, might have been different had not everybody on the team been sick or half the team out isolated or whatever, but the Jets are so remarkably consistent that they belong 32nd, and the real debate is going to come up right about here. I think the real fight that's going to be over power rankings in the NFL is one that's going to go right up until the playoffs. Who's better between the two? So the Jets, they lose at home against Miami. It was expected. Number 31, a team that fired their general manager this week. The Jacksonville Jaguars lost 27-25 against Cleveland. And this coming week, while the Jets are at home against Vegas, which is good news for Vegas. Vegas needs that game. Jacksonville, they're in Minnesota against the suddenly resurgent Vikings. So for Jacksonville, now they've got a new general manager. The question becomes, why did you wait until now? If they were going to fire the general manager, why did it take so long? So that's the question, and at some point soon, I think we're going to end up having Shannon doing a news of the day for football. I think that's where we're headed. Is news of the day around the NFL, and so don't be surprised when that happens. Where I'm doing daily videos on the happenings around the National Football League. So yeah, number 31 is Jacksonville, who were definitely in the news this week, and we'll see how things work out for them going forward. Number 30, Dallas. Yep, they got destroyed 41-16 by Washington. That game was an embarrassment. Now they're going to be in Baltimore on Tuesday because that game gets rescheduled. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. We'll see if Dallas can beat Baltimore. We'll see who's in the lineup for Baltimore, honestly. I was left in the uncomfortable position of feeling bad for Baltimore. I've never been a Ravens fan, so the idea of feeling bad for them, it's a foreign feeling, and yet here we are. So we'll see how things work out for Dallas. None of these teams are in the playoff picture. There's not really much to talk about yet. Number 29, speaking of not being in the playoff picture, the LA Chargers, who, much like expected, lost 27-17 against Buffalo, and now the Chargers are going to be at home against New England. I expect a loss there. They're going to disappoint me if they don't. This season's kind of a throwaway. Just make sure Herbert doesn't get hurt. And just, go through the motions and make sure your jerseys look really snappy. That's basically where the Chargers are at. Again, not in any kind of playoff picture. Hopefully next year things get better, but not right now. Not happening. Number 28, also not happening, are the Bengals. Remember a couple weeks ago when the Bengals were up in 20th? Good times. They've really fallen off the map. They lost to the Giants 19-17 this week. Now they're going into Miami. Again, as a Bengals fan, kind of expecting a loss there. You lose Joe Burrow, sorry. Jim would be his brother Burrow. But you lose Burrow, and that really does cause massive problems if you're the Bengals. He was playing really well, and so he got punished for that, as one might have expected, because it's the Bengals, and yeah, they're kind of known for punishment when it comes to quarterbacks. Yeah, I was just double checking. Burrow had knee surgery this week, so yeah, that's it for him, and of course, I can remember all the way back to Boomer Esiason and then all of the other stuff in between, right up till Dalton. And Dalton has proven recently it's way off for him. Number 27. And it's sad to have Detroit down at number 27. I genuinely don't want Detroit to be 27, but they lost 41-25 against Houston. So again, it's not a game where you can say, well, it was close, which was something they could say a lot last year. This year, not so much. And now they're going into Chicago against a Bears team which has fallen way off the map too. So it honestly should be a pretty good game because they're two teams that know each other pretty well. And for the Lions, they can kind of ruin what's left of Chicago's season if they come out of there with a win. So the NFC North, as it's been better known at times, we'll see how that matchup goes. So yeah, we'll see what happens with Detroit this week. Number 26, Washington. So I went back to the Kevin Malone magnet again for Washington because they don't have a name. So the Washington Football Club, and they should feel pretty self-secure and satisfied right now, coming off of that 41-16 win over Dallas. They're still in the mix. I mean, they don't show on this playoff picture, but they're still in the mix. because it's the NFC East. And for Washington this coming week, they're in Pittsburgh. So we'll get into the Pittsburgh debate. We will. But for Washington, maybe they can go into Pittsburgh and surprise some people. And if they could win Pittsburgh, then that gives them a potential inside track to the division, because the division's bad. And at 25 is the Philadelphia Eagles. So there's that crash. I watched enough of the game between them and Seattle to say, okay, so quarterbacking might be a problem. And Wentz is way off this year. And then, of course, the score kind of flattered him at the end. I thought, I didn't think Philadelphia was really in this game. And for Philadelphia, now they're going to Green Bay. So I'm going to, again, go out on a limb and say probably not going to beat Green Bay. And for the Eagles, they had a chance. They really did. They had the lead in the division, and now they're out of that. But they're still in the playoff picture because they're right behind number 24, which is the New York Giants. So the NFC East is a marvel. NFC East, NFC East, NFC East, and NFC East, the New York Giants, who this week won a monumental matchup with the Bengals, who are right here, 1917. And now, if you're a Giants fan, this week they're in Seattle. So Seattle, who's looked better lately, Seattle should be able to take out the New York Giants. There are moments during any given game where you think, all right, so the defense is going to hold up, right? But the last few weeks have been better for Seattle. Can the Giants break through? I doubt it, and yet they're first in their division. So the number one team in the NFC on the power rankings is 24th on the board. And they are the number 4 seed. They would play against the LA Rams if the playoffs started today. I'm bewildered. Absolutely bewildered at what we're seeing. Number 23, Denver. I did not punish Denver. The NFL did that for me. So the Denver Broncos this week, they lose against the New Orleans Saints. The score on the board is... Did I not end up putting it up here? No, but they lost. They lost against New Orleans. Probably for the best I didn't put it up there, right? That's fine, because the game probably shouldn't have been played. Probably should have been delayed, because all of their quarterbacks were out, leaving poor Hinton out there. And really, in all honesty, that was atrocious. And I know people have said, well, it doesn't really matter. New Orleans would have won it anyways. It does matter. It really does. It makes a difference that you have Denver in a game that they shouldn't even be in. And now they're going into Kansas City. So, Merry Christmas, Denver, I guess. This is really, really rough for them. A team that has it at times this season flirted with maybe getting to 500, maybe making some noise, and that's gone now. And if they'd had, a proper quarterback in that game, who knows? Because New Orleans didn't look like a world beater either. It's not like, I know what the score was. I saw the game. But there were points where you're thinking, if Denver had a quarterback right here, they could maybe get back into this game. They could maybe tie it. They could maybe get a bit of a lead. And, it just didn't happen. And, of course, every time New Orleans threw a tackle, they acted like they won the Super Bowl. So, okie dokie. All right. So all that celebrating. Look, we tackled a high schooler. So anyways, Denver, 23rd. I really didn't punish them. Number 22, Houston. I did reward Houston a bit. So for Houston, they beat Detroit 41-25. It's very, very faint playoff hopes for them, but they're not completely out of it. Very few teams are completely out of it at this point. And for Houston, they're now at home against Indianapolis, which they could win that game. They could. They absolutely could. So for Houston, we'll see what happens. They are not on this board in terms of playoff picture, but they could knock themselves into that playoff picture if they could knock off Indianapolis, who are currently the number 7 seed and final seed in the AFC. Number 21, Carolina. Carolina had a tough break. They lose 28-27 against Minnesota, who, again, as I said, they're definitely charging. The Carolina football team now, we're going to see where they end up this coming week. Okay, so I'm just doing a double check, and Carolina and Tampa are off. So after no teams had a bye this week, Carolina and Tampa are the 2 teams that are off this coming week. So, because I'm looking and going, wait, there's 15 games, there's 32 teams, there should be 16 games. But while we had no bye week this week, we have a bye week next week. So, yeah, good that Carolina's getting the bye week. We'll see how things go for them from here. They're just playing spoiler, but at least it was close with Minnesota, right? Number 20, Atlanta. So the Falcons coming off of, I know I have Atlanta on here, 43-6 victory over Las Vegas. Now, before Vegas fans get upset, I know there were a lot of players that were out. That is a tough loss. So for Atlanta, if they're going to prove, well, you know what, we're better than our record, they can do it this next game at home against New Orleans. So for Atlanta, they move up to 20th. Again, last year I looked at Atlanta and said, I don't understand why this team isn't at least 500 when I looked at the record, when I looked at the team and the attack they could throw together. And this year I'm kind of in the same position where I'm not sure what's wrong with Atlanta, where you fix this. But at least for this week, they move up. And yeah, so it's going to be another one of those years where you're trying to zero in on exactly what's gone wrong. Number 19, speaking of trying to figure what's gone wrong, Chicago. So the Bears this week, they had a 41-25 loss against Green Bay. That was a kind of a mugging by Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. And now for Chicago, they have to win at home against Detroit because Chicago finds themselves as the 9th seed now in the NFC. So they're flirting with completely falling out of this. And in order to get in, well, Arizona is a team that they're chasing to get in, but now they're also behind Minnesota on the tiebreaker. So for Chicago, they can't afford to lose this game against Detroit, or you're watching as the season completely falls by the wayside. And just not enough points. It's really basic. Number 18 is the team that they're now all of a sudden chasing, which is Minnesota. Minnesota coming off of the 28-27 win over Carolina. And now for Minnesota, they're home against Jacksonville. Things look pretty good for Minnesota right now. Got to be honest. They're sitting as the number 8 seed, so they're the last team behind the Arizona Cardinals, and the Cardinals have been dropping as well. So Minnesota may do exactly what I said weeks ago, which is they're one of these teams that they will go on a charge, they can get hot, and if there was any team that could maybe go on a run, I thought Minnesota could be the one. And here we are. They could very well end up doing it. And, of course, what ends up happening after that is Minnesota gets into the playoffs with that hot run, and then they lose the first game of the playoffs, and then you're right back where you started. Number 17, the very, very difficult to predict, winning 20-17 against Arizona, New England Patriots. You never know what you're going to get from these guys one week to the next. And now, this week, they are in LA against the Chargers. They should beat the Chargers, right? We'll see. We'll see what happens because, again, well, the Chargers are down here and New England has moved their way back up. And New England now is the number 10 seed in the NFC East. Or, well, the NFC, or AFC, I should say, not NFC East. NFC East, they'd be leading it. Ridiculous division. But in the AFC, they're the number 10 seed right now, and so they're chasing Indianapolis. So they could do themselves a favor by going in and beating the Chargers, which they should be able to do anyways. I haven't ruled out New England for the playoffs because Bill Belichick, and because I think Cam Newton can heat up too. I know, but I still think he can heat up too. Number 16, the Raiders. So I was torn on the Raiders. The Raiders lose 43-6. They did have a lot of players out. This was a tough night if you're a Raiders fan. Now they're going in against the New York Jets, which is great news if you're a Raiders fan. Now they go in against the Jets. That should be an easy win. The Jets cruising to an 0-16 record at this stage. And so the Raiders need this because for Vegas, right now, they're on this board. Yeah, they're the number 8 seed for the AFC. So they've got Baltimore and New England chasing them. So if you're a New England fan, you're also a Jets fan this weekend. Because if the Jets can beat the Raiders, that does you a favor. So we'll see where that ends up. Number 15. Don't count out San Francisco. The San Francisco 49ers win in LA against the Raiders 23-20. And now for San Francisco, the key thing is going to be they're at home against Buffalo, but it's not at home, it's in Arizona. So they're not playing their games at home because of the contact sport ban in that part of California. We'll see how San Francisco responds to that. But right now they are the number 10 seed. And the announcers were saying after this win over the Raiders, they said, hey, look at the standings. San Francisco's not out of this. If the Rams had beaten the Niners this week, the Niners are basically just getting ready for next year. By beating the Rams, they let fans, media know, hey, we're not out of this. And this is going to be interesting. And it's like I said, the 49ers Rams, that's not as one-sided as one might think when you look back through the history of those teams playing against each other. Even back in the Joe Montana era, I remember some really good games between the Rams and the Niners. And then in the playoffs, the Rams would just fold. It was so frustrating. All right, number 14 is Arizona. Arizona's taken a bit of a dive, and losing to New England 20-17 did not help. And now they're at home against the Rams. If Arizona's going to turn this around, they have to do it this week. They have to beat the Rams. There's no way around it. If they lose, San Francisco wins, then all of a sudden they may very well be chasing after San Francisco because Arizona's the number 7 seed. And then you've got to remember Minnesota and Chicago are still in this too. All of them below 500. But Arizona's only 6-5. So 9 wins will probably get you into the playoffs if you win your tie breaks in the NFC. AFC, it should be 10. 10 should be the cutoff, but it may be 9. Part of this too is that, of course, they expanded the playoffs this year, so there's 14 teams in the playoffs rather than the usual 12. 16 instead of 14. I'll get there. But yeah, we'll see how that goes this weekend. Should be interesting for them, right? Number 13 is Miami. I can't remember Miami being this high this season. I know they weren't last season. Miami wins against the Jets 20-3. And I bumped them up just a little bit because the Cardinals dropped. Now, for Miami, they're at home against Cincinnati this week. This is a great schedule, isn't it? If you're a Dolphins fan, you got to be kind of snickering because your team's 7-4 now. Your team is in the playoffs, so the number 6 seed in the AFC, and now you're at home against the Cincinnati Bengals, who have a quarterback situation just mildly better than what Denver went through this past week. For Miami, that should be an easy win. And then if they go to 8-4, yeah, they should end up being a playoff team out of that. 10-6 should get you there. And so if they go 2-2 the rest of the way after that, yeah, they're golden. And so for Miami, things look pretty good for the first time in a while. It's kind of hard not to say, you know what, I kind of like to see Miami go somewhere. Number 12, Baltimore. Yes, Baltimore takes a drop from 8 down to 12. The reason being, not necessarily just because of this game, but they're now 6-5. They're outside of the playoff picture. They lose yesterday against Pittsburgh 19-14 in a game that was not fantastic overall. And now they're at home against Dallas. Baltimore has to win that game. If Baltimore loses against Dallas, I'll go out on a limb and say they missed the playoffs. This is a game you have to win, and they have to find a way to do it. And I know they were undermanned against Pittsburgh. Who knows what might have happened if they hadn't been undermanned against Pittsburgh, but it happened, and now they are struggling to right the ship. Things have gone very wrong for Baltimore over the last few weeks, and it's just... I couldn't justify having them higher than 12th. So at 11th, the Rams, who lost 23-20 against San Francisco. And for the Rams, that was a very good game. Now they're going in against Arizona. I can't wait to see how the rest of this season goes for that division. The NFC West is just as good as the NFC East is bad. That's my opinion. And I think the Rams should have a bounce-back game against Arizona, but it should be a dogfight, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's 3 points or less that separates those two teams at the end of that game. Pretty impressive overall for the Rams so far this season, and an impressive win for San Francisco too. So there you go. Number 10, Indianapolis. Indianapolis, of course, was the victim of the Tennessee Titans, 45-26. Very high-scoring game. Now they're going into Houston. They should win that. That's a game that, yes, Indianapolis should win. Now, Indianapolis is the number 7 seed. They are sitting just above Vegas, Baltimore, New England. Those are the 3 teams chasing them. So for Indianapolis, they should really win this game this week, because if they don't, we're looking at them probably falling down as low as maybe 10th, 14th, 15th. Don't look now, but Miami a couple weeks from now could be looking at a top 10 spot on the power rankings. And who saw that coming at the start of the year, right? Number 9, Cleveland. They beat Jacksonville 27-25. More importantly, they go to 8-3. So Cleveland is low-key having a very good season. And now they're going in against Tennessee. If they want to prove this is for real, they want to prove that they're, they're a contender, potentially, that they could play spoiler. And keep in mind, they're the number 5 seed right now. If we had the playoffs start this week, it'd be Cleveland and Baltimore, or Cleveland and Buffalo. Who doesn't want to see Cleveland and Buffalo? One of them would have to win a playoff game. That in and of itself means cool. That's a great idea. So Cleveland, we'll see whether or not they can continue things on this upward trend that they've had going this season. Tennessee's going to be a really, really good challenge for them. Number 8, Seattle. Seattle did their business against Philadelphia. They won 23-17. Seattle's in control of their own destiny, and now they're at home against the Giants. They should be able to win that game. So for Seattle, the one thing for me, they're the number 2 seed right now in the NFC. The most important thing with Seattle to me is their defense looks better. Their defense seems to be playing better over the last few weeks. I know it was Philadelphia this week, and I'm aware of Philadelphia's struggles, but it's still important that Seattle, their overall numbers look pretty good by the end of that game. So, pretty impressed with Seattle. Number 7, Tampa. Tampa Bay this week loses 27-24 against Kansas City. Very, very close. Kansas City wins another nail-biter. And so for Tampa, who are the number 6 seed right now and would play Green Bay if we had the playoffs today. Tampa's number 7. Could they fall? Yes. Not this week, though, because they have the bye week. So Tampa has a week off to think things through. It has to be frustrating for Tom Brady. I don't think he's played badly, but I think he's seeing that Tampa Bay is not New England. This is not the same situation, and it's not that easy. But I thought they played well against Kansas City. They just came up short. So, again, I have them at 7. I could have dropped them down to 9, but that seems a little bit extreme. Number 6, Tennessee. Tennessee wins 45-26 against Indianapolis. Tennessee will be at home against Cleveland. That should be a really, really good matchup. Tennessee has been pretty strong throughout the year, and they look for real to me. They're the number 3 seed, would play Miami if the playoffs started today, and who doesn't want to see that matchup? Titans and Dolphins. These playoffs are going to be really good. I think the playoffs are going to be excellent. Adding an extra team on each side is kind of a fun way to go about it, and we'll see how all that turns out. But overall, I like what Tennessee's got going on, and we'll see how that turns out. Number 5, Buffalo. Buffalo at home against the Chargers. 27-17 was the score this week. And now for next week, Buffalo is in San Francisco against the desperate and climbing 49ers. Good challenge for Buffalo. Buffalo does look like they should win their division. But if San Francisco gets the win and then Miami gets a win, suddenly that division's up for grabs between the two teams. And of course, if you're a Patriots fan, you're hoping both teams somehow come up short and you get a chance to really get back into the conversation. As difficult as it is to see any route through which New England can make the playoffs, until they're mathematically out of it, it's always going to be a discussion. Number 4 is Green Bay. So the Green Bay Packers this week, they win 41-25 over the huge fading Chicago Bears. And so for Green Bay this week, they're at home against Philadelphia. That should be, I'm not going to say an easy win, but it should be an easy win. Should be an easy win. This is a game you have to win. Very, very important. So for Green Bay, right now, they sit as the number 3 seed in the NFC. And of course, New Orleans is number 1, and New Orleans gets the 3rd spot on the chart. And yet New Orleans, while they're the number 1 seed, this week's game against Denver just doesn't sit right. Look, I didn't even put it on the board. It's the only game I didn't put on the board. I think it was, 31-3? Yeah. And of course, Denver fans were cheering every time something positive happened for Denver because they understood just how difficult this game was. So when that field goal was kicked, they went nuts because they're like, we didn't get shut out. And for New Orleans, I had to say, too, and this is the difficult thing, I can't really bump them down, but there were times where I thought, New Orleans isn't putting this away. Eventually they did. But early on, I remember thinking, they're not putting this away. If Denver could come up with some other kind of play, they might be able to get through this. They might be able to maybe keep this close, and who knows, the end of the game. But in the end, it's a blowout in favor of New Orleans. I can't criticize them for that or drop them for that. And they are the number 1 seed in the NFC, but I don't think this week's game proved anything. I think this week's game just showed, well, they're not going to lose against a team without a quarterback. And so we'll move on to next week and see how they do in Atlanta and how that game works out for them. Because I didn't think the quarterbacking for the Saints was fantastic either. Number 2, and this is where the argument is. So let me just put both of them on the board and we'll discuss it. Number 1 is still the Steelers. Number 2 is the Chiefs. So I've been watching on Twitter, and NFL Twitter is so much more confrontational than NHL Twitter. NHL Twitter's more sniping and just kind of whiny, but man, things get kind of violent on NFL Twitter. And it escalates very, very fast, and it turns into all kinds of name calling. And when you get into whether or not the Steelers are that good, you get into this huge argument. So the Steelers are still undefeated. They win 19-14 against Baltimore. Kansas City has lost 1 game this year. Kansas City wins 27-24 in Tampa. But neither of these teams won by a ton, and Pittsburgh was playing against a Baltimore team that was missing a bunch of guys. So the question gets asked, are the Steelers really that good, or have they had just a really easy schedule? And the answer, I think, depends on your point of view. I think they're a good team. I think that they've done a remarkable job this year. While Roethlisberger's been good, I don't think he's necessarily been the best quarterback in the league. I think Mahomes is still the best quarterback in the league. And so I can understand the argument for taking Kansas City and putting them at number 1. I have Pittsburgh at number 1 for the 11-0 record. And for the fact that I think that they're mildly ahead of Kansas City overall. Kansas City has had sort of the Hail Mary necessity in a couple of games. The record's very, very good, but they haven't been perfect either. And so I think that these two are very, very close to one another. And I can understand the upset from Kansas City fans in terms of being seen behind Pittsburgh and saying, well, their schedule was easier than ours. And I get that. I do. And we'll see whether or not Pittsburgh can blow out Washington this week and whether or not Kansas City can blow out Denver. Which, again, Kansas City-Denver traditionally has been a pretty good game, even if one team's really good and one team isn't. But we'll see what happens this week. So I get the criticism of Pittsburgh. I do. And yet they're undefeated. And knocking a team out of first place on the power rankings when they're undefeated seems weird to me, but I also get the criticism. And yet Steeler fans don't seem to respond very well to criticism at all. And the battle between what I'm seeing on my timeline on Twitter is mostly Browns fans and Steelers fans going at it. And man, it is not pleasant. So Cleveland, who are the number 5 seeds, Pittsburgh has the bye, of course. Kansas City's the number 2 seed. These teams are all in the same conference, and we'll see if they meet up in the playoffs and just how ugly things get. Because if we end up somehow with Cleveland being up against Pittsburgh in a playoff game, I would imagine there'd be meltdowns online, especially if Cleveland scored an upset. That would just cause a complete and total explosion from Cleveland fans saying, we were right, Pittsburgh's overrated, we were right, their record's a lie, and there you go. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.